Yeah, we are live. Good morning, friends. Thank you for joining our live. Today, you will be toured to Hawaii within the Bishkek American Spaces virtual US State Tour Series. And we have two wonderful guest speakers today, Kainoa Kianaina and Carol Lee. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Aloha.
Aloha. Welcome to our live program. Thank you for accepting our invitation to present your home state. And I'm so excited to introduce you to our followers. Let me introduce Mr. Kainoa Kianaina. He holds a bachelor's degree in business and pursuing his MA in Hawaiian studies. He currently studies with cultural groups in the arts of music, traditional healing, hula, and traditional net making. As a software developer, he aims to create software to better help and connect cultural communities with traditional knowledge and practices. Upon completion of his degree, Kainoa intends to create an organization where culture is the foundation, and his intentions are to normalize the Hawaiian language, traditional healing, traditional protocols, and cultural values into Hawaii's households and businesses. And our second speaker is Miss Carol Lee. She holds a bachelor's degree in civic communications and media in pursuing her MA in Asian International Affairs. Her undergraduate research analyzed discourses of aloha in Hawaii. So she then taught English in China, Hong Kong, and Republic of Korea, where she often shared about Hawaii with her students. And now Carol hopes to promote civic engagement and peace-building prospects in the Asia-Pacific region by connecting the personal to political and creating opportunities for cross-cultural understanding and diplomacy. So, dear followers, as you see, we have speakers with such an impressive backgrounds. And if you're watching us now, please ask any interested questions about Hawaiian culture, traditions, language during this live. And since we have experts today, and leave your comments in the chat box, and I will address them to our guest speakers. Okay, Carol, Kainoa, welcome once again, and we can start.
Hui. Aloha mai kako. Hello, everybody. My name is Kainoa Kianaina, and thank you so much for having us here to represent our islands, to speak about the many different things we're going to be having in this presentation, such as local culture, traditional culture, the animals, famous places that people have heard here in Hawaii. So I hope that you guys enjoy our presentation. We're going to go through a lot of content. So I really hope that you guys enjoy it. And again, please feel free to ask any questions where we could, hopefully elaborate, explain to you guys a little more about the topic. So yeah, enjoy, you guys. And again, my name is Kainoa Kianaina. Here you see me in hula adornment. It was a practice that it's hula that we're going to talk about later on. I don't want to jump ahead. But hula is very famous here in Hawaii. And men and female also do hula, but I study in Hawaiian studies and my focus is in Hawaiian healing. And I want to let Carol introduce more of herself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here with Kainoa. We wanted to share about our home because it's really special. It's a really special place, but not a lot of people know about it. Many people know about the beaches and a lot of just Hollywood, but there's so much more to these islands. And I'm very happy to be here. So, yeah, are you ready to get started, Kainoa?
Yeah, let's do this.
Woo! All right. So just a disclaimer, we are not official representatives of the U.S. Embassy in the Kyrgyz Republic. So any opinions expressed during this presentation are solely our own and do not express the views or opinions of the U.S. Embassy or Kyrgyz Republic. So this is just me and Kainoa talking about Hawaii today.
And our experiences here.
Yes. All right.
Did
you know?
So did you know that Barack Obama, once a president here in the U.S., he's also from Hawaii. So
yes.
If you guys didn't know, well, now you know.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know if you recognize some of these people, these very famous people. We have Bruno Mars, and Nicole Scherzinger, and also Jack Johnson. They're all from Hawaii as well. And we kind of take pride. Our island
Yeah.
When someone does something big from our islands, we're like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we're such a small like place in the world, and to see these people like pop up in like big places, oh, super proud of them. It's
Yes,
awesome.
absolutely. I love telling people I went to the same high school as Bruno Mars. I mean, 10 years apart, but same high school.
Yeah, so awesome. And then we have our other two actors. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but there's Jason Momoa, who's Aquaman. Hopefully, he comes out with this awesome movie number 2. And of course, we have The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He's in a lot of movies, but hopefully, you guys seen the movies that they're in. Great actors, but they're also from Hawaii as well. Jason Momoa, he went to the island. He used to live on the island of Oahu, and he grew up on the west side, on the Waianae side. And Dwayne Johnson, which is The Rock, he went to school at McKinley, which is in Townside. So yeah, also two local boys here from Hawaii.
Mm-hmm. So just to get started with our presentation, we want to first start off with talking about famous places here in Hawaii. And we wanted to start with Manoa because that is where we're located. So we are both students at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and we're also students here at the East-West Center. And this is the valley we're located in. And I think for a lot of us here in Hawaii, our sense of place is very important, recognizing where we are and the resources that feed us. So we just wanted to recognize Manoa first off. And you may have known about this place. It's very famous, Waikiki. And it used to be a swamp, actually. Like, imagine that all these buildings weren't here before. It used to be swamp and marshlands, but it just like turned into a huge tourist hub. And Kainoa, did you want to talk a little bit more about the famous Diamond Head?
Yeah, so here in Waikiki, there's a place called Diamond Head, and a lot of people go there, and it's actually a nice, beautiful crater that you can actually hike to the top. But most times, people are waiting like 5 o'clock in the morning to take on that hike. But it's called Diamond Head because at one point there was something shining on the top, on the highest point of what we call Diamond Head, and that's kind of how it got its name. But the English name, the Hawaiian name, is called Lai Ahi. Lai meaning forehead and Ahi meaning fire. So people kind of think about, okay, Diamond Head, or do we call it Lai Ahi or Le Ahi? But also one thing to note about Waikiki was really famous for having this one specific fish called manini. The manini fish used to eat this certain seaweed that was only for the chiefs and the chiefess. So some pretty cool things to know. And also in Le'ahi, Diamond Head, and in Waikiki is one of the best places to learn how to surf because it has a nice coral reef where it allows surfers to be away from sharks, and yeah, just a nice, easy place to surf.
Absolutely. And oh yeah, I remember when we were making this presentation, you were telling me a lot of interesting points about Kainoa Point.
Yeah, so Kainoa Point, it's all the way on the west side. If you take a look at our island map that's right in the center of us, if you look all the way to the left, that point all the way as if it was pointing to the left, that is Kainoa Point. So Kainoa Point, people see it as a nice walk out, take a walk to the beach. At the end of it, there's a bird sanctuary, a bird called Moli. It's here native. But also culturally, this is the spot for our ancestors where if your spirit left your body or if they're going in a coma, your spirit would actually go to this side of the island, which is called the Lena. And in the Lena, that's the transition to figure out if your spirit is going to go back into your body or if it's going to transition to the afterlife. Now, in traditional knowledge, we don't have a heaven or hell. It's just the afterlife. So your guardians of your family would help you to make the judgment. Is it time for you to transition to the afterlife? Do you need to go back to your body so that you can fulfill the responsibilities that you still have? Or do you roam the islands for eternity? But that's why Kainoa Point is such a special and secret area here on this island. Yeah, Kainoa Point.
Very cool. And I wanted to talk briefly about our two biggest mountains here on Oahu. The first one is Ka'ala Mountain, and it is one of the biggest mountains on Oahu. And the second one is the Ko'olau Mountain Range, located on the east side of Oahu. And look who we have here.
Yeah. So that's the Ko'olau summit, and we actually had to be dropped off via helicopter because the bushes the trail is very hard to get to the top. So yeah, it's nice, beautiful.
Absolutely breathtaking. And you would typically see these mountains in a lot of the movies you watch, like Jurassic Park or Jumanji.
Yeah, totally. So people commonly know Hawaii as having only 8 islands. As you can see on the bottom right corner, that those are 8 islands. We actually have another island that's coming out on the bottom right of the big island, or Hawaii. But what people don't mention is that we had more islands than just 8 islands. We had about 20, 21 islands as well. And although that you can't really live on them like we can on these other islands, they're still part of Hawaii. They still have names, they have traditional names, and they actually are federally protected now. They have a beautiful marine life, but now we call it Papahana Mokuakea. So it's good to know when people talk about Hawaiian Islands, it's not just 8 islands. We have more than 8 islands. We have way more in the northwest of our main islands. So to start off with the 2 main islands, two of our 2 main islands is Hawaii, which is in the bottom right of southeast of the Hawaiian chain. It's known to have like the active volcano Kilauea. So it's the only island that has active volcanic activity at the moment, and many big chiefs come out from that island. Maui is also known for having great chiefly lines, but it's also famous today for having Jaws. And if you guys are familiar with Jaws, not just the movie with the sharks, but we're talking about Jaws the waves. Waves over here on Maui get to 100 feet. If
What?
you think about 100 feet, yeah, the waves get very big over there. So please be careful if you do come to Hawaii and you do swim, because that's really breathtaking.
Absolutely. Everywhere you go, actually, if you ever come to Hawaii, just be careful. Ocean safety. That's something some people don't think about.
Yeah, and I think what's really important to acknowledge, these are the only 2 islands, I believe, that have snow on them, and certain parts of the year. So Hawaii has 2 areas that usually have snow, which is Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa. Mauna Kea is one of the highest peaks in the world, and then Maui has a place called Haleakala. Haleakala means house of the sun, where the demigod Maui captured the sun. But yeah, these are the 2 islands that have snow or volcanic activity.
So we actually have snow here in Hawaii.
And also to our next islands right next door, which is Kaho'olawe and Lanai. Kaho'olawe used to be inhabited, where people used to live there. There was an aquifer, and if you're not familiar with an aquifer, it's the source of stream water. It's a place where it holds all the rainwater. So in order to live on an island, it needs an aquifer. Unfortunately, when it came to World War II, a lot of the families on Kaho'olawe were evicted, and it ended up becoming a military practice area. And one of the bombs, for practicing purposes, it actually demolished or destroyed one of the aquifers. And so even till today, they're still trying to clean it up. And it was a long battle. There's a whole nother topic, a whole nother story where we could talk about the revival or reclaiming Kaho'olawe. Today, there's not bombing, but there's actually some type of cleanup that's happening on that island, restoration happening on that island. It's very beautiful. For Lanai is a very small island. It's one city, Lanai City. And also, traditionally, Lanai was the area where if you were bad, you were taken to that island, because there are many ghouls and ghosts that would hunt and make trouble to the person on that island. Today, there's not that much activities that we commonly hear today about it. But yeah, this is Kaho'olawe and Lanai.
And for the next 2 islands, the first one is the island of Oahu. It's the one Kainoa and I are both on right now. It is the most populated island in Hawaii. The most. I would say, I have to look up the statistics, but I believe at least 80% of the population lives on Oahu. The morning traffic is not fun.
Not at all.
But we make it work, absolutely. And on Oahu, there were a lot of chiefly lines from here, and there are the most military bases here on Oahu. and as well as Pearl Harbor, which we will talk about later. And then the island of Molokai, I feel like it's kind of opposite of Oahu, where a lot of like the local culture is maintained. It's not overly populated, and it's known. It used to be the university for kahuna, and if you don't know, kahuna is like the word for spiritual leaders or spiritual guides, very important. And this is kind of where they would learn and practice as well. And then our last two islands, the island of Kauai, is kind of the first one on the northwest side, the only one on the northwest side that you can kind of visit, but it's known to be very beautiful, and it is the rainiest and wettest island. And then lastly, we have Ni'ihau, which is owned by the Robinson family. So you can only go there if you have permission. So now we're going to move on to animals of Hawaii. I love our animals here. They're so cute.
Yeah.
So, they're so fun. And it's cool because sometimes you could just be going to the beach and they come hang out. Especially now with the pandemic and there's less people, the animals have been coming back and laying eggs and everything. So it's kind of beautiful.
But do take note as a disclaimer, though, if you do visit Hawaii, like please keep your distance because it is against the law to get certain amount of feet close to these different animals, whether it be sea turtles, dolphins, whales, or monk seals. So just take note of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Please don't try and get a selfie with them and go up. They're animals. They need their space, and they're also endangered, especially our Hawaiian monk seal. So we have our honu, the green sea turtle. And I will give you a moment to try and pronounce our state fish. Yes, it used to be a tongue twister while we were growing up, but it's the humu humu nuku nuku apua'a. And then we have, our famous Hawaiian monk seal. And we also have birds here in Hawaii. So our state bird is the nene goose. But we also have lots of great native birds, such as the elepaio and the pueo bird as well. And
we have some amazing insects here in Hawaii as well. And the one that I wanted to show you guys today is called the happy face spider, known for its red, huge happy face that you see on its butt. People think it's poisonous or toxic, but it's not. They usually get like little bugs, gnats. Look how small they are on that leaf. This is my finger on that picture on the left side. They are very small. And the thing is, here in Hawaii, a lot of people think they're legends or myths because they're so hard to find. And a short story is that with this leaf right here, that was the first time I've ever seen a happy face spider. 24 years that you only hear about them, you see them in books, but never like actually get to see what they're like, move around. So I was so surprised to see one, but then two of them. Oh man, it was so amazing. But if you ever see a happy face spider, I believe they're endemic. If you do see one, just please take care of it, and just observe them from afar.
That's so cool. Yeah. And not a lot of people know we have this happy face spider either. So that's so cool.
Yeah. Some other things I want to share with you guys. We have a lot of invasive species. Although we're on an island, one of the benefits of being on an island is that we get to isolate a lot of animals and plants that are probably bad, invasive species that are bad to our environment. And when I say invasive, I'm talking about they take away like a lot of resources, and then we can't use them for anything. We can't use those plants. Now, some of these invasive species, such as the mongoose, it's the funny story with the mongoose is that during the plantation era, there was this little bug on a plant on the vegetables. So they brought in this snail to eat the mites. Unfortunately, that snail was eating the mites and it was eating the plants. So in order to take care of the snail, they brought over a rat. But the rat was also eating the snails. It was eating the plants, the fruits, and it was also eating the birds. So they tried to bring the mongoose over to take care of the rats. But they didn't know that the rats only function at nighttime, and versus the mongoose, they only function in the day. So now you brought over the mongoose, and the mongoose started eating all kind of birds and all kind of native species. So they're actually really bad here in Hawaii. Other thing too is our African snail you see in the top right. They're really very big. Those are the snails I was talking about. And also Jackson chameleons are very invasive. A lot of people have them as pets here in Hawaii, but what happens is that they eat a lot of rare Hawaiian snails. Hawaiian snails only give live birth 7 times a year, versus the Jackson chameleon, they give birth about hundreds per year, and they occasionally eat maybe 7 rare snails per. I'm not too sure how to say it. Sit maybe, I'm not too sure, but yeah, they're very highly invasive. So we try our best to protect these islands, not just environmentally, where it's like the development, but also through different species in the forest.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're going to talk about historic places here in Hawaii. There's a lot of history. So the first place, a very important one that many people come to visit, is Iolani Palace. And Iolani Palace is very interesting because it had electricity even before the White House. And it is the home, and it was built by King David Kalakaua, who we'll talk about later, known as the Merry Monarch here in Hawaii. It's where the Bayonet Constitution was signed, and later where the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom happened, and Queen Liliuokalani was locked away in the palace. So it's now a historic landmark, and you can take tours, and a very significant place where a lot of social movements also happen here as well.
A lot of people know Pearl Harbor from the World War II. I would like to say, and this is my personal thought, my disclaimer, is that I think the bombing happened because there were warships at Pearl Harbor. But it depends who you argue with. The thing is, with Pearl Harbor, what is supposed to be called Keawalau o Pu'uloa, I'll let you guys try it with me. Keawalau o Pu'uloa. That is the original name, but we call it Pu'uloa. Now, Pu'uloa was famous for having oysters, like nice, beautiful oysters. Although, because there's so much warships and activity there now, people won't harvest. The water's kind of contaminated in that area, so I wouldn't recommend it. But not too many people know that it was a beautiful area before the military kind of occupied in that space. But yeah, so if you hear Pearl Harbor, just know it's called Pu'uloa, and it was famous for having oysters and beautiful pearls.
I can see why the name came up, but yes, Pu'uloa. And food is next up on our list. And I don't know about you, Kainoa, but I feel like most people who grow up here end up becoming like foodies. Like we love going out, we love eating food together. It's such an integral part of our culture as well. So to start off, we can talk about ancient food back in ancient Hawaii. So there, we ate pig, dog, chicken, and I something that I found really interesting was the imu, which is the underground oven. And I remember in elementary school, in my elementary school, we had a day dedicated where they actually made an imu and constructed an imu, and then we put like a lot of the pig underneath the ground, and you cook it for like a day. And you cook it with like banana leaves and all this other kind of stuff. And the next day you have like delicious food to eat. So I think that was really cool for me to do as an elementary school student.
Yeah, and one thing to add, I know that Native Americans also cook underground, but I think it's only in Polynesia where they use like different leaves and banana stumps so that the food is nice and moist. That if you eat anything from the imu, it has this like smoky, moist texture to it. It's so good. So
absolutely. And then another staple, I believe, is pounding kalo for poi. So kalo is the taro plant, and then you take the root. And it's really interesting because the kalo plant represents family in many ways. Each part of the plant is utilized, like nothing is wasted. And poi, I kind of think of it like rice is so integral to, like, I'm Korean and Chinese. Rice is so integral to my culture. And I feel poi is so integral to Hawaiian culture. It's like it feeds, it enriches, and it's very nutritious as well. Yes. And some other Hawaiian food that you should eat when you come to Hawaii. You don't just eat teriyaki chicken and pineapple pizza. I suggest for you to try kalua pig, lau lau, ulu or breadfruit, poi, as we mentioned. Poke is a very important staple, and haupia. And I think all these foods are very delicious.
Yeah, I think the one thing to mention too, what commonly happens here in Hawaii, people pronounce poke as poki, and you don't want to say poki because that's cat. So and then poke, yeah, it happens so much even within my family. Like I always have to remind them, like, can we say poke, not poki? And then poke is a style of cutting, like dicing up. So that's actually a traditional practice. It's not just raw fish. It can be ulu, what you see in the top right. It can be that haupia. It's all poke up. You know, it gets poke. That's the style of cutting.
Very cool.
Yeah, so our paina food, which is our party food. So here in Hawaii, we like to hold celebrations for every single thing. Your first birthday, turning 18, 16, graduating, like we'll find reasons to like get together, and of course not during this time, but we'll have so many reasons to get together. But one of the most important part of the party and the celebration is the food. So here is, it's not always traditional food that's on the table. We also have different local foods that's not traditional. So in our picture on the left side, on the top left, you see like there's beef stew in there. There's rice. It's not a traditional Hawaiian food, but because Hawaii has so many different cultures because of the plantation era, there's a huge collaboration with a different meal. So like even for our family too, rice has been part of our main food now. And also in there we have kalua pig. Kind of below the rice, we have, I think that's kalbi, poi, stulu, and then on our right, if you see on the top, that's called lomi lomi salmon. Now, salmon, you can't even catch that here in Hawaii, but you know, people call it a Hawaiian food. We like to call it more of a local food. So there's like salmon, tomatoes in there, green onions. But yeah, just know when people say lomi lomi salmon, lomi lomi is a cultural practice, but I guess it's the way that it's prepped. They call it lomi lomi salmon. But yeah, it's now a local food.
Absolutely. Oh, and what's not a local food?
So this is one of the biggest things, you know. You probably had a pizza maybe at one point where it had, was it ham and pineapple? Yeah, so pineapple is not a Hawaiian plant. It's not from here. They grow it here because, you know, there's a lot of land that they can grow pineapple. It has good conditions where pineapples can grow, but it's not a Hawaiian plant. So when people say Hawaiian pizza, I'm like, But coffee too. People always go Kona coffee. I'm like, yeah, it's not a Hawaiian plant, but it can grow here. It's now an invasive plant here in Hawaii on our island as well. But yeah, just know, tell your families, pineapple and coffee are not Hawaiian foods. They're not a traditional Hawaiian food, or they're not even from Hawaii in the first place.
All right, so we kind of touched on local places and culture, which is different from traditional Hawaiian culture. This was kind of emergent after, as Kainoa mentioned, the plantation era, when people from all different countries, backgrounds, and nationalities either moved here or were like decided to come here and work in the plantations, or were forced to work in the plantations. And then the cultures just started mixing. So some local spots, if you ever come to visit Hawaii, I recommend, if you want to get out your pen and paper, if you haven't done that already, we have Rainbow Drive-In. And what do you recommend to order when you're there?
Okay, so my favorite for Rainbow's Drive-In, I believe there's 2 branches on Oahu now. One is in Kapakulu. The other one is at a mall called Pearl Ridge. But Rainbow's Drive-In, my favorite is what we call the mixed plate. Okay, remember this. The mixed plate that has, like, you know, chicken, shrimp, and all kind of different things. That's why it's called a mixed plate. But you have to have it with brown gravy all over. You have to order that. It's so delicious. You won't regret it. It's so good.
Absolutely. And every time I leave Hawaii and I come back, my best friend actually takes me to Zippy's. So Zippy's is also a famous local spot. If you're ever on the North Shore side of Hawaii, you can get shrimp, like Kahuku shrimp, Giovanni shrimp trucks. And Helena's Hawaiian food is delicious too. And of course, our favorite dessert place, Liliha Bakery, with yummy, like you can get like green tea filled cocoa cream puffs or chocolate filled. It's just so good.
Okay, so now we're gonna go to a little bit of local culture in these next couple slides. So here in Hawaii, it's very common to be wearing lei. If you guys know what a lei is, like a what we call garland, that's probably the English terminology, a necklace of flowers. But we use leis for many different things as a gift. It makes it look pretty. It smells great, especially during graduation season. It's common to see people stacked with leis up to their eyes. That's like something that happens here in Hawaii. When I graduated college in California, it was the Hawaii people that had so many
Yeah,
leis up
me
to
too
their
in
eyes.
Oregon.
But
Yeah.
everybody else, they probably had like one necklace, maybe a handshake.
Or
Like,
nothing.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, oh wow, I didn't realize it was that different. So I'm here to tell you guys, yeah, here in Hawaii, it's definitely a local thing to just be decorated with so many leis. Another one you probably seen is a shaka. The story that I was told that how that was born is that there was this plantation worker. He didn't have his middle fingers, so when he waved his middle fingers, so when he waved, it looked like this. And I guess he was a very polite, nice person to remember. So I guess everybody started to use this, not just as a represent him, but maybe the way he carried himself. Yeah, and his energy. Another thing too is you're gonna see commonly here in Hawaii that we always have the Hawaiian flag raised with any other flags, which is the U.S. flag. It's common to see both flags up. Personally, I always just like to carry my Hawaiian flag, have my only Hawaiian flag. But yeah, in federal areas, you're gonna see both Hawaiian flag and the U.S. flag. Mm-hmm.
And a very important part of local culture in Hawaii is this idea of community. We are very community-oriented people. So one part of it, just for fun, we take off our shoes before we enter people's houses because we want clean floors and everything. And we also sometimes bring in gifts too. I think gifts are really important. And we kind of call everyone family member names. So you, instead of just saying like Mr. I don't know, Kea, I know,
Yeah.
like you say like uncle, auntie, cousin, or cuz. We often greet each other with hugs, which is kind of difficult right now with COVID. Actually, I'm kind of like air hug.
Yeah. I think that was one of the issues I had with going to school in California is when you greet somebody, hi, my name is Kainoa, and then someone gives you a handshake. At first, it was like, wow, that's so new to me. I was always, yeah, come in for a hug, but it's like, yeah, exactly. Like, do I give you a handshake or a hug? I'm not too sure. Yeah.
No, absolutely. When I was an English teacher in China and Korea, I can't help it. It's such a habit. So I would hug them and they're like, what is she doing? You're like, oh, oops, I'm so sorry. So yeah, hugging is very common here. And once the pandemic started, actually, we're very community oriented. So it was very quickly for us to wear masks here in Hawaii. And and as Kainoa said, we love big gatherings. We love potlucks. Even in elementary school, our end of the year celebration would be potlucks, and each of us would like bring a dish, and we would like watch movies and eat together. And some other aspects of local culture, when we're giving directions, we just say either Mauka, or the mountain, or Makai. Like we don't say like north, west, east, south, because I think due to the weather and just culturally, most of us shower at night because you don't want to go to bed like all sticky and hot.
Yeah. I have a couple of friends who only shower in the morning, and I just thought that was kind of strange. Yeah.
And in terms of local attire, you see people wearing aloha wear, like even for nice events, you can just wear aloha shirt and some khakis or more casual board shorts. And we call these this footwear, we call them slippers or slippas. And we're very prideful of that. We don't call them flip-flops or thongs like other places or people do. So yeah, this is just a little Hawaii quirks.
Yeah, some cool things that I've noticed too here in Hawaii, that like even some of the fast food restaurants would actually kind of tweak their menus to like to have more Hawaiian or local flavor to it. So like spam, we have spam, Portuguese sausage, eggs, and rice. I didn't know that's not a common thing to have at McDonald's. So when I went to travel to Japan or California, like they didn't have it on their menu, and I was like, wait, why? Like how come? Another thing we have is spam musubi, which is pretty much like spam rice, and it's wrapped with nori on top. And then as well as our plate lunches here in Hawaii, like we talked about, food is such a big thing. And when people say plate lunch, it could just mean a variety of different things in it, mixed food, mixed plates. Yeah, plate lunches are huge here, especially plate lunch wagons. There's a lot of vendors who have different wagons that you'll find here on the island. Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to talk about Hawaiian cultural practices. So if you want to start us off, Kainoa.
Yeah, so this is my jam right here. This is Hawaiian cultural practices is definitely something that I really key into. So on our left side, we have lomi lomi, which is traditional Hawaiian healing. This specific one that you see on the left side is called lomi ae, which is the type of stepping on the person. So you see sometimes when people do massage, they will actually use their hands and elbows, but we have a practice where we actually step on the person because sometimes that person just needs more pressure, and it helps the practitioner to just let gravity do all the work. So this is lomi ae. On your top right, that is hula. So here in Hawaii, annually there's a event called Merry Monarch, which is like the Olympics for hula, where all like the best of the best hula dancers or the hula groups, they come together to compete and showcase their genealogy or their style of dancing. On the bottom left, in the middle, with that red looking thing, that's what we call a lei hulu, which is going to be a lei, what we sing with flowers, but this time it's going to be feathers. And then on our right side, that's what we call koko pu'u pu'u. Koko is a type of net making that was used to put over gourds or anything that was precious to you. But that type of style is not really seen too much today. But yeah, it's very interesting to see it come back now. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And some other cultural practices as well as masters of cultural practices. So something important to note that there's a very important emphasis on preserving Hawaiian culture because it's just so important and so beautiful, but it was very threatened, especially during the colonialism and even now during modernization. So these masters of these practices, like I would say Kainoa himself, are very important. So first we have farming practices with Jerry Konanui. And he's actually very sought out. He taught students traditional farming. Also in Hawaii, we have fishing. Eddie Ka'anana was very active in the community. And Kainoa, is there anything more you want to add about him?
Yeah, Uncle Eddie Ka'anana, he although he came from a fishing background, he was very active in the community. He would even after he passed away, I've come to learn from different professors and doctors, like he was always there at these different activities, teaching, helping out. And it's so funny, like, wow, like he was very all over the place and very engaged with his community. So not just fishing, there's a definitely a different variety of events that he went to help out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then we have, I think many of you know, especially with Moana, like the art of navigating, Nainoa Thompson. And then you have also wood carving with, kalai lao. Is that how you pronounce it?
Kalai lao, yes.
Kalai lao, yes. So very important.
Yeah, some other cultural practice that we have here. Let's start with our left. We'll start with our left. Kia'i manu. You see that bird. Manu is bird. But kia'i manu was a practice where you capture the bird. You take maybe 2 or 3 feathers when you caught it on the tree using sticky sap, and then it would be wrapped on top of an ahu'ula, which is one of those feather capes that you also see in the pictures. Now, if you can imagine, they only take 2 or 3 feathers so it doesn't hurt the bird. Like, can you imagine how many birds it takes to make a cape or some type of helmet? But that's called kia'i manu. On our bottom left, we have umuhau pohaku, which is rock stacking for making altars or walls of fish ponds. Very important. On our top right is my good friend Mahi. He's trying to bring back the practice of ukeke, which is it's a Hawaiian instrument played with 1 string on it. And then on our bottom right, I had to put this as our cultural practice because here in Hawaii, music is a very important thing that connects families and cultures together. I remember, I forget who it was, but the quote was, music connects people. And I can say that for Hawaiian culture and here in Hawaii, Hawaiian music does gather people at parties and gather to people socially. Yeah, so Hawaiian music.
Absolutely. And the final section we wanted to talk about are important people and events that happened here in Hawaii, who lived here in Hawaii. So first, we want to acknowledge Kamehameha the Great. He was the king or the chief and turned king who unified the islands. And there was this huge epic battle in Nu'uanu. And he's very celebrated and well known today. And I think when I was looking up Kyrgyzstan a little bit, I came across the Epic of Manas. So I kind of found a parallel, I think, of this whole idea of uniting a group of people. And his wife, his favorite wife, Queen Ka'ahumanu, was arguably more powerful than him, actually. She was a very smart woman, and he couldn't even look her in the eyes. And when he passed away, Queen Ka'ahumanu actually took over and enacted a lot of policies that kind of changed spirituality and regulation in Hawaii. And we have many Hawaiian monarchs. So first we have King Kamehameha I, and then you have the following Kamehamehas, the second, third, fourth, fifth, afterwards. And then King Lunalilo was the first elected monarch in Hawaii, followed by King Kalakaua, who built the Iolani Palace, which we mentioned earlier. And then the final remaining monarch before the overthrow was Queen Liliuokalani. Mm-hmm. And some musicians, if you have your music playlist ready, we recommend you can listen to Bara Is Kamaka Kaviva Ole. And the famous song he wrote was Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And my personal favorite, and Kainoa has actually worked with him, Kele'i Raichel, and his song Mauna Leo. Whenever I'm away from home, I always listen to this song to kind of remind me of Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And some other change makers you kind of want to note here in Hawaii and on the islands, we have Bernice Pauahi Bishop, who established Kamehameha schools. So it's a school specifically for Native Hawaiian students. And I think this is really important to have a space where they can learn in their own cultural context. And we have Kainoa knows Uncle Billy Freitas, who was one of the kahuna, kupuna, one of the kupuna who was arrested while trying to protect Mauna Kea, our sacred mountain here. And then Hanani K. Trask is an amazing scholar activist who wrote a number of works about Hawaii and the importance of preserving Hawaii and fighting for the islands. And then also Kumuhina is a very important activist and art practitioner and talks about Mahu identity and gender diversity here in Hawaii. And also some policies that really affected the islands. First would be the Great Mahele. So in Hawaii, the term aina doesn't just translate to land. It's not that simple. It's this whole idea, the land which feeds us. There's this reciprocal relationship with the land where we take care of the land, and the land, we don't just take resources from the land. But with the Great Mahele, it kind of split up the islands and made it into commodities. And the amount of land that was left over for the Maka'ainana and the common people was very little. So I believe people who colonized kind of just took advantage and it really changed the landscape of Hawaii. And then, you bring in the plantation era, the sugarcane and pineapple became really big. A lot of immigrants came. And although it created this local culture that we have now and this multiculturalism, that also changed Hawaii as well.
Yeah, so a lot of different events, right, that happened here in Hawaii. So one thing we have to go back to is Iolani Palace, why it was one of the most epic areas here in Hawaii, or one of the maybe saddest part of Hawaii is that's when the overthrow happened with the illegal annexation. And what that means is that the Republic of Hawaii, or the group of people at that time that was forcing Hawaii political powers to force them to give their power up and make Hawaii a state, or just give all the power away to these foreigners. And so when the overthrow happened, there was a list going around called the Ku'e petition, where if I remember correctly, it was like very high number percentage, 90%, 95% of locals and Hawaiians did not want the annexation to happen. Because in annexation, you can give the party, you can join groups, but this was an illegal annexation. So again, the Ku'e petition, that book was supposed to go to Washington, D.C. to say, like, no, Hawaii does not want to be a part of the U.S. It's not a mutual relationship or an agreement, and so this book ends up being hidden, and it pops up years after the legal annexation. And so and again, this overthrow, we can have a whole class about it, but it's very good to acknowledge. We should acknowledge that this happened. So when people say that, is Hawaii a state of the U.S., and like, if you actually want to see paper for paper, like, Hawaii isn't part of the U.S. It's still a Hawaiian kingdom. Now, what does that mean and functioning in today's time? It's hard because everyone just kind of like, it's what we call like whitewash, don't remember, brainwash. They don't understand this part. Yeah, it's a very sensitive topic, but it's something you guys should definitely look into. But we're kind of sensitive on time at the moment, so we'll try to hit on to the next topic. And with that, so a lot of Hawaiian practices were prohibited, whether it be hula, medicine, speaking Hawaiian language. And it wasn't until after Kalakaua, when he became in reign, he was called the Hawaiian Renaissance, because he was bringing back Hawaiian culture, whether it be medicine, hula, language. And again, if you think about, wow, your own native language was prohibited to be taught in schools. I remember an ancestor telling me that when she spoke Hawaiian in class, the teacher would grab a yardstick, have her hand like this, and would whack her hand. And later that teacher would follow her home to scold the parents, to discourage them. Don't teach your children to speak Hawaiian. Like, you're not going to go far. It's dumb, just dumbing down on Hawaiian knowledge. And so that created a huge generation gap of speakers, traditional practitioners. But yeah, we're living in the Hawaiian Renaissance. Right now, we're part of that, trying to bring back Hawaiian knowledge and practice. And for myself too, like with Hawaiian medicine. Okay, so military land. Yeah, as we said before, Oahu has one of the most military lands here on this island. And so I've kind of named a few already on this slide. We have Pearl Harbor, which is Keawalau Pu'uloa. We talked about Kaho'olawe, people getting evicted from Kaho'olawe. But there are also valleys here, like Makua Valley, where there was a huge families, it was a big community, and they're just evicted from there so that military could fire at it, from a helicopter, from warships. If you think about it, from the ship, firing missiles into the valley. There was this huge decade where they're fighting to get the land back, and finally they don't practice that anymore, but it still has UXOs, which is explosive, so they're still trying to clean it out. I really don't know when it's going to be finished, but it's one thing to acknowledge Makua Valley. And also, sorry, another thing, Makua Valley was the spot here on Oahu. If you broke tabu or kapu, if you got there, you were safe. That was the haven. Another one is, we have 3 highways here in Hawaii, or on Oahu, and one is called the H3. A lot of locals didn't want the H3 because it was only used for military purposes at the time, and they were going to drill through the mountain, and the mountain meant a lot. It's part of our ancestors, part of our family, part of our genealogy, and to like drill a hole through your kupuna, your ancestor, that just hit another level. But where the highway was built was on both sides of the mountain were sacred areas. There are many like sacred temples that were on Halawa side, which is on the south side, and then there is also on He'eia side, which is the east north side. But yeah, so there's a lot of military occupation here. And then with military occupation, there's a lot of development here happening in Hawaii. And one thing I always have to mention is that the more development that we have here in Hawaii, the less paradise we're going to have. So if you think about all the advertisements people see, yeah, we won't have all those paradise looks. It's just going to be overdeveloped. But with development, there's a lot of people end up finding bones and burial grounds. Here we have one where Walmart was being built and they found family bones, which was actually my family. But yeah, here is
my
where they
God.
try to make something. But yeah, it happens quite a lot in development. Politics, even today, a lot of communities, they're still trying to protect sacred areas, sacred practices. On our top right, we have Hunana Niho, which is right next door to us, a Share Woods, where they're going to build a park over an old grave site of natives. On our bottom left is that site area that they're going to build. Sorry, on our bottom right is that site area, Hunana Niho. Bottom left, this is one of like the biggest streets that we have here on Oahu called Kalakaua Avenue in Waikiki. That street was filled up with protesters, peaceful protesters against what they're called against a group called TMT, a 30-meter telescope that was going to be built on Mauna Kea. But we have all these different issues, even till today, it comes up where a lot of locals have to fight to protect their homes from these different entities, you know? So yeah, there's building parks, there's building windmills. We're going through a casino fight right now. There's a TMT. And another one too, we have Hawaiian Homestead, where they tried to bring Hawaiians back to the land, but the land was still owned by the state. It's very funky. That.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And you took all these pictures, yeah?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm a photographer on those active days.
Were you here? Wasn't this last 2 summers ago?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I was there too. That was before we knew each other.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that is the end of our presentation. Thank you all so much. I hope you learned about Hawaii, and the next time, you know, someone, if you think about coming to Hawaii, you're much more informed. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for this wonderful tour to the state of Hawaii and its islands, dear Carol and Kainoa. It was such a great journey. We could virtually visit your home state without leaving our usual places. It was really nice, and it was such a great, insightful introduction to your home state, its history, traditions, and so many similarities between Kyrgyz and Hawaiian cultures, such as taking off shoes before entering the house. It's the same here. And calling elder people uncle and aunt is also part of our culture as well. Like we call Eje for female and Baike for male if we are younger. And Kyrgyz people also love family gatherings and parties very much. Yeah, let me check the comment section because we have so many comments. People are thanking you, saying hi to you. So here we have a comment from Jillian, loving your presentation, Carol and Kainoa. So thank you, Jillian, for your comment. And Daniel Karimov also saying hi to you. And we have a question from Kasiet. She's asking, hello, guys. I realized all famous and handsome guys from Hawaii. The question is, what is the traditional Hawaii holiday gift?
Oh, I would say Lay's. Lay's, you can't go wrong with Lay's. But if you want to ship it out, I don't think that's going to make it. But people use yarn Lay's sometimes too. Maybe it's not the same material, but at least it's the same, the essence of it, the same meaning behind it. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. And here we also have a question. Thank you for the presentation, Carol and Kainoa. And what are the restrictions for the international travelers currently in Hawaii? What is the situation with pandemic?
How did you go?
Okay, yeah, that's an important question. Yeah. So as Kainoa mentioned, we are an island, so it's like a double-edged sword, right? We can decide to close the borders of the island, or which we can protect the people, but then also if more people come, it's more likelihood for the virus. So we were following some sort of tier system. If there were like less than 100 cases on a 1 week average daily cases, then we can move up to tier 2. So currently right now we have to wear masks everywhere we go. Restaurants are open, but we can only eat with 5 people. So there's a lot of different rules like this. Yeah. However, There used to be a 14-day mandatory quarantine, but now they turned it into a pre-testing program where if you take a COVID test 3 days prior to coming to Hawaii, you can skip the quarantine. However, I do see a correlation. I don't have the science behind it, but there has been a correlation of cases rising because we don't have a strict restriction anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I support what she says because yeah, that's one of our biggest debates here on the island. Like we want to protect our people, but at the same time, like our government, there's some miscommunication, different priorities, and it's just hard. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even with vaccines coming out too, we've just got like our news about people even getting it with the vaccine. So yeah, it's a hard time now.
Yeah, because I guess because if we do have a really bad outbreak here, our healthcare system is already overwhelmed at the moment. So if it gets worse, like it's not like we can import more hospital beds or ventilate. We're probably, I would say, one of the most isolated places in the world. So I think that's why it's such a big concern here.
I see. Thank you for your answers. And we have another question. Are there universities in Hawaii that provide scholarship opportunities for international students?
Absolutely. You wanna?
Yeah, we're part of this program called the East-West Center, and they actually really focus on international learning. So yeah, we met many different people through this the East-West Center from all over the world as well. Not just here in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm. And so if you look up East-West Center Hawaii, you can look at the different scholarships they have available. And then one I recommend looking at is the graduate degree fellowship. So if you're looking to get a graduate degree here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, you can apply for the scholarship. But also there are just many scholarships available here as well.
Thank you. And here we have a question. Very nice to know about Poki and Poki on Poki. Like, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. We have the snake kurut, and people always call it kurt, which means worm.
Oh.
Yeah. I'll give a good example. So like my name, Kainoa. If you say Kainoa, Kai is like ocean, Noa is like calm. But if you say Kainoa, so listen to this. Kainoa and Kainoa. Kainoa is like fishes. Yeah, it's like waste. So if you just say pronunciation different, it's gonna mean something totally different. You have ocean and then you have fishes. So Kainoa, Kainoa. Yeah, it's very subtle. Yeah.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And we have here more questions. Here from Idai, we have top 3 things you love the most about Hawaii.
Oh, that's such a good question.
Food, people,
What was the last one?
Culture.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I would say food for sure. Weather. I definitely love the weather here.
By the way.
And the last one, I think just the history. I think it's really important to learn and to know and just know how how strong I think Native Hawaiian people are despite everything, and something that really inspires me too as someone who's not Native Hawaiian to learn about growing up. I'm very lucky.
Yeah, thank you for your answers. We have here. I've already read this, and here we have another question. What islands should I visit first? Is it possible to visit all of them, or would it be too expensive?
That depends on your financial case. I wouldn't recommend to travel anytime soon as we're in a mess with this whole COVID situation. But if you were to visit island first, you probably could start here because one, it's probably the most overpopulated area, and then it gets nicer once you visit another island.
And I also recommend visiting places like the Bishop Museum or even Iolani Palace to learn about Hawaiian history and culture. So this place is a little bit more meaningful And then you can go off and see the volcanoes or some of the other stuff on the other islands.
Yep.
Nice, thanks. We have here question from Said. Said says, "Can you please tell about rock and roll?" Maybe he meant rock and roll.
Oh, I don't listen to rock and roll, but I know my friends do.
Okay, I thought that it's part of the culture, like rock and roll. Maybe he meant just rock and roll. Yeah, and also here our viewers are saying thank you for your presentation and asking about ukulele. About it. Yeah, you can talk about it.
I remember in elementary school trying to learn, but I never got further than that.
Yeah, I play, but I should have had it beside me. But yeah, I do.
You can play, right?
Yeah, ukulele and guitar. Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
I was like gonna ask, should I plug in your YouTube channel? But I don't know. I don't know if you're making content anymore.
Yes, please share if you have any YouTube channels.
Okay.
Learn about your culture more. You can send a private chat I can share with our audience.
Or any of your links.
Don't be shy. Thank you. It was our last question. Thank you for joining for this presentation. It was such a great conversation, and this was like such a great presentation, meeting with new people and learning about new cultures. We could learn about this beautiful state in tropics outside the North America, and which is located, as I said before, 7,000 miles away from Kyrgyzstan. And I really loved your session. I will show your presentation to my daughter definitely, because I think she will be amazed with this happy face spider. She loves animals. Yeah. And now we have to wrap up. I want to thank our viewers and followers for asking your questions and for watching us. Wish you all to stay safe. And Carol, Kainoa, hope to see you both in Kyrgyzstan in the future. I hope you enjoyed the session as well. Thank you for this wonderful meeting and for this wonderful conversation. And
thank you.
Have a good day and have a good weekend. Stay tuned.
Aloha.
Bye.
Yes, aloha.
Aloha.